Joining us now from Israel, independent journalist Noga Tarnopolsky and New York Times chief White House correspondent and MSNBC political analyst Peter Baker. So, Noga, I'll ask you what Raf just ended with. Is this going to change things?
For now, there aren't any indications that, as massive as they are, that these protests are going to influence Netanyahu. In fact, he has seemed to kind of stiffen his back since 500,000 Israelis took to the streets on Sunday night. But you do have a feeling in this country that something has got to give. Netanyahu is caught in a stickier and stickier web. For the first time, President Biden has openly expressed his disappointment with him. Tonight, he's been accused of tampering with official war protocols. And you just have a feeling that somehow, as firmly as he's holding on to power, it's just not sustainable.
Haaretz had an editorial today saying that part of the responsibility for this going on as long as it has is on the Israeli public, that they haven't protested in these numbers since judicial reform. But when they do get things done, and they use judicial reform as the example. They use Yoav Gallant getting reinstalled as defense minister as example. Why is it the argument that the Israeli people haven't been... what do you think of that argument? Do you think the Israeli people haven't yet gotten angry enough, publicly enough, to force change?
Look, I think it's a problematic argument, and I think I have to say that it also echoes one of the sentiments which Netanyahu himself said yesterday in a sort of strange press conference he held, in which he said that he hadn't retaken the Philadelphia corridor, this area of Gaza that he now says Israel can't live without. He hasn't taken it in the last, 17 years in which he's been in power because, quote, there wasn't a public consensus to support it. So he was blaming the public. I think the media, or Haaretz in particular, blaming the public is a little bit
Well,
rich.
it was I should say it was Alon Pincus, not the editorial board. It was Alon Pincus.
I think I know Alon, and I think I understand why he says that the Israelis haven't gotten angry enough. And the reason is that the Israeli opposition has failed to bring forces together and force Netanyahu from power, that even the judiciary has sort of soft-pedaled Netanyahu, who has been acting more and more brazenly against the law. And so I think there is a feeling, and that's probably what Alon was expressing, that if the Israeli people don't simply bring this country to a halt, that nothing else is going to do it.
So the UK, Peter, has pulled back on some of its weapons shipments with this new Labour government to Israel, saying they're not confident that they would be used humanely. Yesterday, President Biden was asked whether he thought Benjamin Netanyahu was doing enough to get the hostages out, and he said no. Do you foresee any change in protocol, though, and policy toward Israel from the U.S.?
Well, look, it's possible, obviously. President Biden did halt one weapon shipment, as we remember, back several months ago, of 2,000-pound and 500-pound bombs that he said could be used in Rafah and that would be too devastating to civilians. That was one example where he has done that. He has not done that since, and other weapon shipments have gone forward. He has been unwilling to have a complete blanket cutoff, but the pressure obviously is rising, and having the British do what they've done increases the pressure, of course, on President Biden as well. They have said that they are putting together what they think will be, or what they say will be, the final bridging proposal for a ceasefire to get past whatever differences remain between the Israelis and Hamas to get to this ceasefire deal. But this is not the first time that they've said that they are putting together a final proposal. The question is whether this final one really means final. There is talk for the first time for the administration that we haven't heard before of the idea that if this bridging proposal is not accepted, that would be the end of it, that there wouldn't be any point in further negotiations. That hasn't been something they have said before. They're closer to throwing up their hands, it feels like, than they have been in the past. They have worked so hard and so diligently to get to a ceasefire without results, but they have not been willing to pull the trigger, as you say, on the issue of holding back arms on a more sustained basis, as the British just did.
Noga, do you think that would be effective if the Americans did that? Or what would that do? What would that mean in Israel?
It would be huge in Israel. In fact, today, a study was published in Yediot Ahronot, a tabloid newspaper today, saying that the Israeli Air Force could not actually function for more than a few months if it lost American support. This, of course, would be a very, very radical move on the part of the United States, and it would have significant implications also for U.S. national security that sort of depends on this alliance with Israel. But even having the threat of that as a sort of Damocles over Netanyahu is significant. I think the only reason we aren't hearing a more severe reaction is just that the Israeli public space right now is too overwhelmed to react to that particular threat.
It was just another horrifying weekend. Noga Tarnopolsky, really good to have you as always. Peter Baker, thank you.